Mic check, mic check. Mic, mic check. Mic check, mic check.
You make some cute kids. I know.
Let me see that baby.
That was their. That's like the leaf awkward.
That's cuter than the baby chicks. I'll admit.
Yeah, let's just pop your because their spring pictures came back today. Yeah. Right.
Might have brought her
You cooler.
the after meeting, eating. Yeah. Well, we ready to get started? Excellent. Believe it or not, we are down to 4 meetings after scheduled meetings after today. So we hope we can come to an agreement by the end of the school year, and we'll work our hardest to do that. But ultimately, this group I know will do what needs to be done. Kind of reminder that we do have a change in location, not next week, but the week after. So we'll be at the Tech Center on the 28th. The other thing that I wanted to mention, besides, I hope the Forest View baby chicks bring you all a little bit of joy, is that on the back for the processes, Julia, of course, is our note taker extraordinaire. And obviously, since it takes a couple days to get the minutes out, we're not always able to look at those before the next meeting, but I think we have a good cadence. One thing, since we are meeting weekly, one thing that we've done in the past, if it's overwhelming for everybody to look at the minutes every time, one thing that we could talk about in the future, if this is helpful, is in the past, we've designated like 1 or 2 people on each side to look at the notes very carefully. Everybody can take a quick look. But at some point, as the school year is winding down, if we want to revisit that, we can. We just want to make sure that they're accurate. And I know there's a lot of emails flying back and forth right now. So let me know if we would revisit that. Okay. All right. Otherwise, I think the only committee update is extracurricular academic support.
We do have a mini count. Or
Ooh. Conference.
Hello.
Yeah. Perfect.
Just
Okay.
a mini one though, but
Hey, we love any update we can get.
So ECAS, we had our last Zoom meeting last week, I think. And we're still waiting on getting information together, but what's going to happen is the committee is going to rank, prioritize the different proposals that we've got past the line, and then have a report out to this group. I think we said our goal was by the 23rd, for our meeting on the 23rd is the hope.
Yeah, I'll follow up with Eric and see when the ranking is going to come out.
Yeah, because I thought but yeah.
Yeah.
I think that one thing that we're being very careful to do this time is to be very precise about cost estimating on these different proposals, knowing where we are. So thinking about, yes, here's the max cost for this proposal, but also here's what we are currently paying for that role. So, for instance, like with esports, will probably be something I anticipate the group will be bringing forward and ranked fairly high, because it's very likely that with a different hat on, I'm going to vote to make that Acacia activity next week. So, but we are already paying something for that. So it wouldn't be accurate to just say that the full cost of 5 high school esports positions is the increase in cost, if that makes sense. But so I think that's taking a little while longer to make sure that we have all that massaged correctly.
Our mini conference update.
yeah, so mini conference update, which please jump in because clearly I'm scrambled today. But we didn't meet, originally we were scheduled to meet yesterday. But after looking at the timeline and kind of the work that we have ahead of us, there wasn't really a need to meet as a whole committee. It was handled in an email. I think our goal is that we are going to look at putting together a survey that can go to parents or guardians, community members that attend conferences, because there wasn't any questions included in the district survey that was sent out. But we can send one out probably after fall conferences would make sense, or have information like look for a survey after conferences, kind of a feedback follow-up survey sort of thing. So we're looking to have 5, maybe 8 questions, something like that, about conferences, and then just to have that feedback, but then also come up with questions for our staff members too, just to see if what we're all hearing anecdotally is actually their perceptions, or if that's just the people speaking loudest for feedback. So yeah, that I think is probably the mini update. Is there anything you would add?
We'll look to get some data from the past few years. Part of it too was getting the information in February after multiple delays, and what kind of data are we going to get, that sort of thing. So yeah, that'll all be part of it, with the goal of having some surveys go out after October. Hopefully a very normal October conference.
Sure.
Right.
In the chat.
Yeah.
Thank you both for your work on that committee. All right, so just to verify, all the items listed in our draft consensus, rather, those are all in the professional council folder, so that we've got those accessible. So we've made some progress, so we've got to celebrate the progress. We've got quite a few discussion of previous proposals. The things that are asterisk are the things that we have some revisions based on previous feedback. I believe that you all maybe had either a counter proposal or, okay, on leaves. Okay, perfect. And then we have a proposal related to the CEU reimbursement that we introduced last week. That is the feedback from the group last week was to go ahead and bring that language. So it's not brand new, but it wasn't previously, the language wasn't completed last time. And then I think you all have lead bank. So I think that gives us plenty of work to do. Where would we like to start? Yeah, we can go ahead and go through our stuff and then leaves. Everything that we have today is based on our conversations from last. Oh, yes, planned. So the modification here is pretty minor, but went ahead and printed a new one. Most of these, the changes are also highlighted in yellow that are coming around. So I'll let Shelby take over.
Okay, so just kind of a brief reminder of what we talked about last time. Our plan time language is in the negotiated agreement, as written in the negotiated agreement. Obviously applies to all educators, but we had some non-classroom or non-traditional kind of staff feel that they weren't accurately represented in the language as it currently exists. So on the next slide, you'll be able to see, I'll read it out just so we can highlight where the revisions are. Individual plan time is necessary for all to fulfill professional responsibilities, which may include, and this is our new revision to the policy, but is not limited to instructional planning and preparation, evaluating student work or progress, documenting services, developing materials and resources, maintaining communication with families and other educators, and completing job-specific professional duties. If we skip down a little bit, the nature of these activities may be vary based on the educator's role. It is recognized that on occasion, administrative meetings may occur during individual plan time, which is the exception and not the rule. Non-classroom educators will have individual plan time commensurate with this policy in varied increments for the purpose of completing the responsibilities of their position. So our discussion around the table last week was we didn't want to kind of pigeonhole people into the duties listed. So again, that revision is not limited to. Open it up.
Question. That addition, so yeah, I think we're good to move that one to draft consensus.
Agreed.
And for the bill.
Yeah.
Didn't get the bill yet.
Next up was still within the same policy, still professional day. This is, oh yeah, this is Medicaid. So again, the revised portions are highlighted in yellow. One of them we talked about last time, and then one of them kind of popped up after I had some additional conversations after people watched the live stream and reached out for additional feedback. It's kind of nice to have that feedback loop. I'll wait till that gets all the way around. Did miss highlighting the word regularly. All right, is there enough coming around? Okay, perfect. So, yeah, counting to 12 sometimes is difficult. So last time we brought the language that did not include the words irregularly scheduled. So Medicaid billing will be exempted from regularly scheduled, and we had the term afternoon activities, which did not mean what we wanted it to mean. So we said after school duties, so they can work on Medicaid billing at that time rather. And so those are the two changes that we talked about at the table last time. We know that things pop up, and if there are a ton of subs in the building or what have you, that if an RFP that has Medicaid billing responsibilities needs to do a dismissal duty to make sure the kids are safe, like obviously you want to make sure that gets done. The feedback that I got from a couple of early childhood educators was that sometimes in those buildings, particularly Heartland and Harmony, they tend to have a higher caseload of Medicaid just because of the building and the needs of that building. So their feedback was that sometimes it's helpful to have, there's a break in the day in between the two sessions. So to say afternoon duty, that it could be helpful for some of them to have some time in between the two early childhood sessions, the morning and the afternoon, to get the Medicaid from the first session and the Medicaid from the second. But there was really no way of crafting that language so that applied to everybody. So what we came up with as a place to start is if other duties interfere with an educator's ability to complete Medicaid paperwork due to high caseload. So really talking about those exceptions, those people on our survey who are saying that they're spending an hour or 2 hours a day on Medicaid billing, right? So those big ones. The educator should communicate with their administrator to collaborate on an adjustment to their schedule. To kind of open the door to that conversation that if you are not able to get that done within your contract day, we want you to get it done during your contract day because it's really important that Medicaid billing, in fact, gets done. We don't want any educator to not have time and then just not do that billing. So the intent of that language is to open up the door for that educator to have a conversation with the administrator about what could be adjusted so that I can get that Medicaid billing done.
I think one other piece with that is we had some feedback from some of these providers saying throughout the year, their caseload of students who will be on Medicaid will shift based on maybe a student starting, but they're not yet Medicaid. And so they wanted to have some language that in case their caseload does increase, because it can ebb and flow of what students are on Medicaid and not, and those who are not, to kind of just provide language that could support them in a case where it could be even higher than normal.
And the other thing, I'm so glad you mentioned, the other thing that popped up is obviously with our 3 tiers of busing and the 3 different schedules, there's not the same amount of time between the end of school and the end of contract time, just because that's the way it worked out. So to kind of give a little bit of give for the different levels, you know, elementary doesn't have a great deal of time after. Most of the people on the survey, most of them said they could get their Medicaid billing done in like 15, 20 minutes. But just trying to make a little room for those that have exceptional caseloads.
I think like in this, could you tell me if this helps with the last sentence there? So like I talked to some principals and they, like obviously the part-time ones that we don't put in after dismissal duties. And that's what I was wondering if, I mean, they all just kind of have all hands on deck. So like they use everybody. So, and to me, I'm like, well, could you adjust their schedule, like, so they have 15 minutes before dismissal that they're not seeing kids? So do you feel like that would cover that language, like, hey, I need you for dismissal, but let's adjust your schedule enough? Yeah, like, or in, yeah, or if. Is that, and I think it was like 50-50, like in the room, they're like, oh my gosh, we use these people.
Yeah.
At dismissal, that would really hurt and then there's some like, yeah, we don't use them because they're part-time, you know?
Right.
So I was just like, well, could you work with their schedule enough? Or do you feel like that would just be understood with that?
Well, I even wonder if you could flip administrator and educator. So if the administrator needs the educator at the end of the day, then the administrator can lead that discussion, you know, like, so I'm going to adjust to the educators. Does that make sense? So the administrator should communicate with the educator to collaborate. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I'm just trying, because I think those two things are different things. They're both valid things, and we want to figure out a way to make sure that the language that we have allows our schools to have the supervision they need.
Yeah.
But the sentence that's highlighted is more about, I have 20 minutes to do Medicaid, but I have an hour and a half of Medicaid building. And then the issue you brought is just a different issue. Very important. So I'm just trying to figure out how to get them both in there. I wonder if, to address your issue, and I don't know if this might be too messy, we just might need to think about it, but is to include at the end of that sentence in red, or another time as.
Mutually agreed.
Yeah, okay.
Is that okay? That way, they're not gonna get hung up on, no, this says I don't have to.
Because I've heard from some RSPs that they like doing dismissal duty,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, that could be, it could kind of go both ways.
Yeah.
Something like, no, I really do want to do that, but I would still like to have time to Medicaid.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Just that made them a sense then, since you're already telling them you should figure it out.
I think it might.
Another thing to think about is when we're thinking about giving them the time to do this, it needs to be after they've seen those kids.
Right.
That's why I was thinking like, adjust your schedule at the end of the day, or, you know, I don't see kids past 3:30 or something, so I
Yeah.
can always have.
That time.
Yeah.
I would imagine, you know, we could add or another time that's mutually agreed to at the end of the day, but I would assume that an RSP wouldn't agree
Right.
that would be at 7 AM when they haven't seen anybody.
Right.
So I don't know if
Yeah.
that language would be necessary, but I'm glad you tagged.
And if we, the question is if we included at any other time mutually agreed to the highlighted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to get some feedback. And for those that are actually doing it, to see what they think. In my world, that seems like it would maybe address the issue, but sometimes what I think and for the people that are doing the task think are different. Anything else on Medicaid billing?
I'm just saying, maybe have just a curiosity that, do we have any concern that this is opening a door for, you know, other staff educator groups that have required paperwork and, you know, special education, that kind of thing?
Yeah,
If we write language like this, we're then, there's going to come a point where.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing that is unique to Medicaid billing, is the financial aspect of it, and B, the fact that it is intended to be done every day.
Yeah.
I know there's a little bit of leeway there within the week, but it's supposed to be done every day. But yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely, every job has some aspect of paperwork that they're concerned about, but I think this is unique in those respects.
How we're gonna
Mhm.
differentiate.
Right.
And say no. That much so. There's always going to be working out contact day, and I don't want to give the impression that we don't ever think that's an expectation, because it will always be.
It's related. I just think of like the daily deadline. Then I think of like, if we're talking about IEPs or progress monitoring, that they don't have a 1-day deadline to get it done. So I don't know if that could be a part, if it was brought to us, that Medicaid billing is required to be done within the same day.
Yeah, and I could see, like you said, I could see that the concern would come from SPED, and I think we've suggested the SPED subcommittee as a way to bring some of those SPED concerns, because, you know, it is our job to look at all those concerns. But I still see this one as being unique because of the daily nature of it. All right, we will try for draft 3. See if we can get it closer. All right, next up is CEU reimbursements. And the change is just on the back.
So we brought back what we had proposed last week related to a CEU, or CEUs being added into the language. And the one change that we've added is kind of explaining the difference between the building level PD and the district level PD, and kind of managing who would be responsible of deciding. And so the yellow highlighted is what we added, saying educators who use CEUs should collaborate with their building administrator on building focused professional learning, and then the appropriate district level administrator for district focused professional learning, so that we could differentiate if they're wanting to use professional development time, who they should go to based on the type of professional learning. And then they can then have that conversation.
I had a chance to touch base with Anjanette, told her a little bit just to get her perspective on this, and she said absolutely on building PD days, a lot of time there may be not as the easily differentiated PD at the building level, and so she was totally good with that part. She said on district PD days, they try to have activities planned that actually gain CEU. There's an approval process that they have to go through, usually about 30 days out to get that activity approved as a CEU. But the idea is always to have those activities planned on those district PD days for them to gain CEU. So probably will be more applicable to building PD days, she thought. But certainly if there was a case where they weren't earning CEUs on a district day, that would be okay too.
Yeah, this is tricky because the level of difficulty to get something approved for CEU is different based on
Right.
the job category.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, she said they usually have a lot of activities for SLP.
Yeah, SLPs, there's usually a lot. I'm hearing a lot from nurses,
Yeah.
OTs, PTs.
And then the rest of the language was the same as what we had presented last time. It was just that addition in yellow based on the conversation we had last time.
Any other question on that one, Dave?
Consensus?
So-
Wow. Okay. All right, the last one that we have, I did not reprint the reimbursement form that we looked at last time. As you may recall, we are suggesting that those needing to earn CEUs could be reimbursed up to $500 a year. And it's the same form as the licensure form. Most of the CEU seeking professionals that completed our survey indicated they were spending more like $200 to $400 a year, some zero, some 1,000 plus. So we kind of found something there in the middle. And then we found some additional language on the other district stipends page that referred to the SLP Certificate of Clinical Competence reimbursement, which years ago was broadened to include any job category that needed CEUs to recertify. We just never updated the language on that page. So it is in red, not highlighted, because this is the first time you all are seeing it. And we really just tried to take the language from the reimbursement form and put it on here. So non-KSDE license renewal and CEU cost. So of course that CEU cost would be the piece that would be contingent upon what we settle on. When the license certificate necessary for the educator's position is issued by a state agency other than KSDE, the district will reimburse the educators the renewal cost of that license certificate. So that part is just from the reimbursement form. And up to $500 per year documented CEU costs necessary for renewal after 1 year of initial employment. So that middle part about CEU costs is the additional part. I didn't do anything with the reimbursement form is available on the Ozone, but I also couldn't find it there. So we might kind of look, either I'm missing it or it's in a different location now.
But that reimbursement form is in the negotiated agreement, right?
It's also in the agreement, yeah.
So we might just see if it is located somewhere else, and if it's not, maybe
Yeah,
that sentence changes to
I thought maybe on base, no luck
Whatever.
there.
whatever verbiage or
Yeah.
not page number or
Yeah, we ran
section.
into that problem before too, where it's change.
Yeah. Do you want to be able to tell people where to go to get it?
Yeah. Versus the exact length like it is.
Yeah.
So we can go ahead and find exactly where that's at, and update that language.
Yeah.
to where the form's at. More thoughts on cost? There's the $500 per year. We're good with that, or?
Didn't we determine that most of these are 2-year type, so probably every 2 years have to, let's say they divide up, it's probably about 55,000 a year if everybody does their CEUs. So I hate to be the buzzkill about the ding, but I think anything that has money, we have to kind of say, we agree language, but let's wait till we look at salary schedule to absolutely say it's done.
In your survey, that you had people say they were spending anywhere from 100 to 1,000 per year though, right?
The survey did ask per year. I will tell you, there were a couple responses that they answered every 2 year, even though the survey asked for a year, but generally they put per 2 years.
That's what we were trying to figure out. Is if people really are getting $500 per year, you're looking at 622 people, I think is what I written down.
Yeah.
So 222 times 500
Yeah.
every year, that's a pretty
Yeah.
constant cost, so. That's why I wonder if that was per year, what the people would.
Yeah, that's what the question asked, but sometimes people provided the 2-year cost. And like I said,
The average for those a little over 100 respondents was between 2 and 4. There was like 1 or 2 outliers who went way above that.
$200.
Yeah.
yeah, that was the average. And of course, we had outliers. We had 0. And then we had the,
I find
A
all
lot
the
more.
pre-CE.
yeah,
And then I just wanna make sure that what I'm interpreting is what everyone else is interpreting, that, because my interpretation is that they would then submit the reimbursement for the CEUs when their license is coming for renewal, that they're not annually going to be submitting the CEU reimbursement, even if it's not a year for them to renew their license.
that would probably be something you want to clarify.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking of sheer volume for our office.
Yeah,
Because there's one person who does all
Yeah.
of this. And so I'd like it to coincide with when they
you would
renew.
include the CEUs when you do your license.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can include those CEUs that you accrued in the last 2 years, so you could have a maximum of $1,000 reimbursement. But it just comes every 2 years, so that
Okay.
you don't have.
That way it's all processed together.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of
And then it'll make it easier for Jenny to be able to track and know that those were the CEUs to renew for that license cycle, kind of like what the educator.
But it was obviously.
Every year.
Annually.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we could work on trying to clarify that, because I don't think that was, I wasn't thinking about that piece, so we can work on trying to clarify that with language and bring that back. All right, I think those are all of our items that we.
There's a couple others. Last time, we talked extraordinary and unscheduled student events. Well, we're gonna circle back.
We can, I didn't print them again because we didn't make any adjustments, but if there were some adjustments that I missed.
I think.
They're like all in there.
Not a single.
The only thing that we thought of, is we talked a little bit, I think we said it, is if it becomes excessive or that the teacher is putting in every day, for that. Can we put something in there? We said that would obviously become a conversation between the administrator and teacher, but is there some language that we put in there that said that?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah, we did have that conversation. I don't know if we landed on any language, so I'm definitely open to what that might look like. Yeah, we have like 3 things in that same policy.
Well, we had even kind of thrown around, we kind of tried to think about how that could be written, like, even if it was a matter of the educator letting their administrator know after the fact, like, we all fully get that when this situation's arising, you're not going to be at the phone and be like, oh gosh, Clint needs, support, that kind of thing. But I'm wondering if we could put something in that, following that occurrence, I mean, even if it's just an email, like, had a, student crisis, missed my plan time. Just so the principal would have a little bit of a tracking in terms of knowing if it's a continual issue, hey, we need to visit and figure out, like, who do we have supporting Clint at this time? And maybe we need to do something different there.
Yeah, maybe in conjunction with that, obviously some statement that says that after the fact, some sort of notification to the principal, and then some sort of statement that wording is, if it becomes excessive or regular, that, you know,
You know,
there should be a
discussion.
discussion between administrator and teacher to see what other supports might be available or something like that.
Following such occasion, the educator will notify the administrator.
Mhm.
Something to look at if.
Administrator. May request to meet with the educator.
Maybe educator. The administrator should collaborate, see if additional supports are available or something like that.
Megan looks inspired over here.
That should there be a consistent need for support, educator and administrator should collaborate to discuss additional supports and remedies.
I like that. I think the goal is that our educators are getting their plan and their
Yeah,
life. Like that's really
So
what
if
we
it's
want.
happening over.
Yeah.
Trying to.
But when it doesn't, we want, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Will you say it again? I like that.
I said, should there be a consistent need for support, maybe I should say for this support.
Need for compensation
No.
or
For the
for
educator to be missing time, I think is not the compensation part, but that's kind of.
Yeah,
Educator and administrator should collaborate to discuss additional supports and remedies. Alternative supports. Should there be a consistent need for such compensation? Educator and administrator
Yeah,
should
yeah.
collaborate to discuss alternative supports and remedies.
yeah. Okay. Okay. I think I've got enough scribbled down and then you got some too that we can bring that back. Yeah. Yeah, because I think we didn't quite get the language right the first time. But we definitely saw improvement with the data, so. Hopefully we can get it right this time.
The other one I had, Andrew, is the one that you guys have proposed, is the rate of pay for coverage. We talked about that one a little bit last time. We had some figures, maybe. that-
Numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
numbers.
It looks like his focus probably seems to be piggyback on that increase. Last year, we, this situations, $73,000. Teacher coverage is 220. So if we go $30 to $40, see that being about.
These are people who.
Sure. This duty free lunch was $72,640. What I call teacher coverage was $211,380. So if you go from 30, if that was generated at $30 an hour, and you move to $40 an hour, those two combined are $94,675.
So that would be the overall increase based on these proposed increases.
And it just popped in my mind, our favorite thing, plus another little bit for FICA.
Okay.
Forgot about that.
So that would be for both the.
Both, yeah, it breaks
unscheduled-
down, let's see, the missed plan time lunch is 24,215. Coverage is 70,460.
The hours of is
Well,
that?
but some of that teacher coverage, I guess, could be related.
Short of sub.
Yeah.
Somebody.
Yeah, but that's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Like,
The change.
Yeah.
We don't-
Right, but like. Yes. Has increased that significantly,
Yeah.
yes. But like that's,
We don't have that to use.
Oh, yeah, because the special have 11.
yeah,
So you're
Yeah.
having to pay people more.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you for those numbers.
Sure.
So that one, by no means are we against the increase, obviously, that's increased 17, 18, so we're
Mhm.
we totally acknowledge that probably is above home purchase, you know, now. That, you know, the total package might be kind of like the CE cost, we'll probably have to talk about that.
Yeah.
In the end, it all pulls from the same place, so.
Anything else on any of the other items?
That. Meetings, the match for the end of the follow under that as well.
Yeah.
Any of those up there both.
I can use.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I?
Absolutely.
Close the meeting.
Okay, so this was the language related to, making a change in, a couple of our extended leave policies so that, educators wouldn't have to exhaust their PTO, as they find the need for, FML, non-FML, or childbirth and adoption leave. So, worked with the HR and our leave team to kind of comb through this. And, we felt like we understand the intent and the purpose and support that, but do have some thoughts and, kind of a counter, if you will. So, I know that the print is really small on that, handout, but I've got it up here as well. So the first thing you'll notice on here is that in the opening, kind of paid time off description there, we, kept, except in the cases of FML or childbirth and adoption leave. Annual paid time off must be used before, let me look here, sorry. We were working on this earlier. What we had proposed, I think we just missed this first one, was number one, that rather than allowing staff to keep all of their annual PTO, we felt like it would be more appropriate to keep it in line with what it had been before, and that is to allow them to keep 3 days of their PTO. The difference being obviously our staff now have 15 days of PTO. So if you allow someone to keep all those 15 days of PTO, there's the potential for there to be a pretty extensive amount of absence in the course of 1 year.
So, we also felt like in the case of non-FML medical leave, that we wanted to keep that PTO would need to be exhausted first, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. So I was reading this incorrectly. We've got it right. So except in the case of FML or childbirth and adoption leave, annual PTO would have to be exhausted. And then as I scroll down onto the next page, and I apologize for the blank pages in between when you,
Wow,
we
it's not
read
just me that
line.
it does that.
And we kept trying to get it to go back anyway. So it's fine. So I'll keep kind of scrolling through until we get to the next set of changes, which is going to be under the FML Family Medical Leave Act, section 3 there. So the way that we kind of structured the language was, you can see in that sentence, as provided in federal law, FMLA leave guarantees unpaid leave. However, the district requires employees to use available leave balances. That way we thought it could just kind of cover all of those, no matter what the titling was. And then we felt like it needed to be a separate bullet to really draw attention to the fact that employees may be allowed to retain 3 PTO days upon request prior to leave beginning. And we need that to happen at the beginning because these leaves, of course, are an extended kind of leave that funnel through our leave specialists. And in our Oracle system, it's programmed to take PTO first. And so it's going to take an override. And so someone has to do that override to make sure that they have 3 days of PTO that get reserved back for them. We also wanted it to be left up to the staff member if they didn't want to save any of their PTO days. We didn't want to make it that we had to keep those back either. All the rest of that language would then stay the same. And then under childbirth and adoption leave, skipped over the page, the opening statement there, an employee using childbirth or adoption leave may use their paid time off or accumulated illness bereavement leave as designated below. And then we again took out accumulated just to make it a little cleaner. They may use no more than 60 days of their leave balance for childbirth or adoption. We have the same language that's been in there before if both parents are employed by the district. And then added that number 2, which is employees may be allowed to retain 3 PTO days upon request prior to that leave beginning. And then under non-FML medical leave, so non-FML medical leave gets a little complicated because you can see here that it's some pretty specific groups of people that qualify for non-FML. So first of all, it's going to be anybody who is in their first year of employment with the district and they don't meet that 1,250 hours of being employed and working. It also then includes anybody that has they qualify for FMLA, but they've exhausted FMLA leave. And so this kind of opens up an opportunity for people to also then access the sick leave bank. And so we felt like we were going to get ourselves into a little bit of kind of you're asking to use days from the sick leave bank, but then you've reserved PTO days, and there was going to be some contradictions there. So we just kept if the employee is not eligible for FMLA, or an employee has exhausted their FMLA leave, they'll apply for any accumulated leaves to include illness, bereavement leave, and the pay time off and vacation. And then if their leaves have been used, the employee may apply to the sick leave bank and added that if the employee is a member. And then the other items that were down below here were kind of those additional kind of things that you guys had caught that we hadn't gotten updated. And as we were going over this, we caught one additional thing too. So we were walking kind of through donor leave and looking over that, and notice that you can see there on number 3, it says the combined total of paid leave for purposes in our current policy, it says A through C. And I think it was meaning 1, 2, and 3. Because
there is no A through C?
No, there's no A through
Yeah.
C. So we changed that to be the 1 through 3. And then kept all of the ones in pink here are the ones that was in the language that you all had initially provided. And then we found a redundancy under military leave, so just cleaned that up as well.
Something on that Oregon leave, I think A, 1 and 2 probably actually need to be at the same level of heading. I don't think they're. Something
Under-
gotten messed up above at some point. On the
So-
donor leave,
Donor leave, okay,
at
so.
the very
A-
bottom of that page, let's just copy, like, leave for this purpose, like the A, and then the 1 and the 2, I think are-
But they should be.
yeah. So maybe at one point they were A, B, C, and then we lost it somewhere.
If you, this is the weird part, so we were all kind of disaggregating this, and so if you read letter A, that is up to 15 working days of paid leave without charge for fiscal year for donation of a kidney or any portion of a liver. But when you get to 1, 2, and 3, those are specific to up to 5 working days, because that was for bone marrow. And then 2 is for the blood donation. And then the 3 is just saying that the combined total of leave for purposes, and actually, I think it maybe should be 1 and 2.
Well, I think it means that,
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
it mean the 3 up above, like,
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
thinking.
Yeah,
I'm thinking A, 1 and 2. Well, at one point in time, we're probably A, B,
C
and
is-
C.
A, B, and C.
Yeah, I
And they
think-
probably should be,
Yeah.
they should be,
Yeah.
yeah.
So then rather than change the 1 through
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
make those
A,
Maybe it's-
Yeah.
And then you think the number 3 as it is right now was just, should just be a statement, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be a number
Like a-
or less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I attempt to make those changes?
Yeah.
Just,
You don't want to change like that one.
yeah.
We know what we meant.
So I think I have a question on the non-FMLA
Yeah.
piece. So that first category of educators with, or employees with less than 12 months, they wouldn't have accumulated time anyway, right? Because they're, so do you have a sense of how many people that are using that leave are in that category versus the second one where they've exhausted an FMLA?
I don't.
Okay.
I would be taking a guess,
That's fair.
quite honestly.
It
You
seems
know,
like probably not a very common category.
Right. Well, and most of the time, like, I shouldn't say usually, those are instances where, you have a newly hired educator and they're expecting a baby.
Sure.
And their baby is due in November. They don't have any. Like, most of the time, they want to use every day they can, to get as many days paid as they can. So we didn't want to. We want to continue having the non, covered FML. But felt like in those instances, keeping PTO back didn't make a lot of sense.
On, in that same area, Eric, do you have any more questions about that? In the same area, striking or meets criteria for first year employee.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get to that when we talk about sick leave
Okay.
bank. So that
Okay.
came out of the sick leave bank committee.
Okay, got
So
you.
yes, that
Okay.
was part of that, as we were making those adjustments and saw this in here, we were like, okay.
Question was, when we see employees may be allowed to retain free PTO days upon request prior to leave beginning. Should there be something stating how they do that or what form? Obviously, this would be something brand new, but I feel like in other places, maybe we've put, I don't know,
How to request that.
like, how do I do that?
Well,
You know what I
think
mean?
What we were thinking is that that'll be something we'll add on our back end process side, because there's a whole host of things that happen when somebody requests FML. Okay. There's a
So it
lot
would be a
of
part of.
Yeah.
I was gonna,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes. the leave specialists, we're planning to have that as kind of one of the checks in that process, because put in, let them know that you have a need, and then you get a kind of an auto response that sends you to get you the initial FML paperwork, and then from there, Jennifer or Amber reaching out to you and kind of getting what they need, and so they'll have that in that process.
A lot of Ts to cross and Is to dot in that
Lots of
process.
counting of minutes and days and all those things and documentation.
Anything else on that one?
The last page. I'm just looking at the red on the last page. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, so as we were walking through this, so this is when there's kind of that friendly coverage piece. As we were talking about this, we wanted to be sure that, because the prior statement is colleagues have the prerogative to say no to this request. If agreed, the requesting educator can then. We just
Okay.
wanted to reinforce that.
it has to be agreed to.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we just thought that was.
So that T.
Yeah.
It's adding to that. Going to the next.
Okay.
Press,
Yeah, so it's request,
comma, or if agreed,
If-
comma.
the requesting educator is not deducted any leave. Yeah, we can keep.
So, this was an item that had come up, and it came from our sick leave bank committee, who meets, typically monthly, as if we have any kind of sick leave bank requests. And so, as we, as a committee, have been working together for a few years now, have had enough consistency and have processed enough of these requests that we found there were some common places that we really struggled to know what our language said. I think maybe there had maybe been some merging of policies at some point in time. And so anyway, this was part of our conversation, and we kind of took this last year to really take a look at, okay, what do we need to be doing to kind of clean this up for ourselves? Because it was putting us in some pretty precarious positions as we were making decisions about whether we were going to give people days out of the sick leave bank, and also just how we were going to manage the sick leave bank moving forward. So this is the language that came from our committee's work. So I'm going to start first on the first paragraph there. And again, some of this is just cleanup. Again, the purpose of the leave bank is to provide that additional leave during the contract year for those who experience extraordinary, and we added or non-extraordinary circumstances. As you might imagine, some of the most complex situations are those where somebody has an extraordinary circumstance. So they maybe have a terrible car accident. And then in that same year, they have appendicitis, which would be a non-extraordinary kind of thing, you know. And then the leave bank is only available to staff who have donated days and are members of the bank. We took out or our first year employees because there's a little detail as to how many days a new employee can take from the bank. But there wasn't a lot of detail about, do we mandate they ever donate a day? And we also felt like, knowing that everyone has 15 days of PTO, that our new employees in their first year have days that they can access and use. And really felt like the lead bank should be for those who have donated a day and are truly members of the bank. Because it was also difficult when someone would reach out and want to access the bank, and they've maybe been an employee for 10 plus years and they've never been a member, and now they have a need and now they want to join, and they're pointing to the fact that, well, if we're a first year educator, they can access the bank. So how am I different? So we really felt like we needed to keep this to members of the sick leave bank who had donated a day. This next piece was part of a little bit of our confusion because it talks about having, of course, a minimum number of days that have to be there in order for the bank to be solvent, if you will. But you can see we struck out, I'll read the sentence to you. The operational guideline of the leave bank will be to maintain a balance of leave days equal to a minimum of 1/3 of the total number of staff employed by the district and a maximum equal to the number of staff employed by the district. Well, we were talking about, well, so what happens when if we identify what the maximum is, what happens? Do we give everybody a day back? Well, then we're not at the maximum anymore. And then do we let people be members that don't donate? Well, that doesn't then coincide with everyone else who's already donated a day. And so we really felt like taking that language out, really our whole intent and purpose is to make sure we continue to have that minimum. And that the lead bank shall be administered by the lead bank committee. We kept all of the membership the same. When we get into section C, which is employees joining the lead bank, this is where you're going to see some more of the changes. And of course, that first statement, only those employees donating days are eligible to draw from the bank. So we struck out first year employees. Then after 1 year, each employee wishing to join the bank will donate 1 day of their PTO leave. If no PTO leave is available, 1 day of accrued leave will be donated to the bank. So we just were cleaning that up to coincide with our current PTO language. Then under that same section, under number 4, that refers back to the language we struck out about the maximum. So no additional days will be requested as long as the balance remains at or above the minimum as defined in section A3. Then under section C, requesting days from the bank, we struck out that first statement because that was in reference to those first year employees. We kept everything else in that section in terms of how to request and the days, kind of how that works when we have situations with workers' comp and papers disability. So then we get into extraordinary medical or health related circumstances. And so you can see under that first letter A, so for personal illness, prior to our adjustments here, it was for personal illness. Again, here's some part of our language that was not. It said for more than 20 consecutive days or is determined by the lead bank committee that meets the following criteria. Well, not every situation we were providing days for had 20 consecutive days taken. And we really felt like there are situations where there's maybe an intermittent absences that have caused them to get where they don't have any available leave anymore. And so we took out that 20 consecutive and we added or intermittent to kind of better coincide with really how we've been processing the leave requests. As we get into the bullets underneath that, you can see under that second bullet, this is in reference to when somebody makes application. Obviously it states that has to be from physician, doctor of osteopathy, chiropractor, dentist. And then the lead bank may require an independent second opinion. And we wanted to add from a licensed medical professional at the employee expense. Because we were sometimes getting second opinions that were not really from any medical kind of provider. And so we didn't have language though to say this has to be a medical provider providing that second opinion. That isn't an often thing that we ask for a second opinion, but occasionally we have. Under immediate family or household critical healthcare needs, we didn't make any changes there. Under number 2, individual eligible for applying for the leave bank. Prior to applying for additional days from the bank, individuals who have used or are projected to use all of their PTO and accumulated leave. This application must be for days during the employee's current contract year. So we just, again, we're cleaning up language to match our current leave. And then we added current contract year because we've had some situations where individuals are asking for days in the upcoming year, and we've really tried to always like everything is within this current contract year. And if you find you're gonna have a need that then, you know, causes you to start your contract, then that would be a new application, so that we're just kind of staying within a contract year.
If they had an absence at the end of one contract year that somehow, I don't know how this would happen, would continue into the next year based on this language, it would be 2 applications, even though it's the same
Yes, because
thing.
oftentimes what is happening is they may be coming in saying, making the application, let's say the 1st of May. And I know I'm gonna have to be out all of August as well. Well, we were like, that's a long ways out. And they're going to have a new batch of leave being dumped in. So we didn't want to promise sick leave bank days when they were going to have current leave available to them because of that new contract year also.
Is the sick leave bank, never mind. I answered my own question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. So this next one was another one that we didn't quite understand what the language said before. And so we were finding ourselves in kind of this precarious situation where we would occasionally pull reports to see kind of how the sick leave bank was functioning and how many staff we maybe had still out there who were paying back days. And we were finding that we have some individuals who have lots and lots of days that have been provided in the sick leave bank to a point that there will never be, and they will never be able to repay them. And then they were sometimes coming back and making additional requests. And we were like, oh my goodness, we don't really know based on how this language was written before what the maximum number is. So what we adjusted this to was that the leave bank committee may not grant days to an employee in excess of 90 days, nor beyond the current contract period. We went with 90 days because that would be a semester, and that then would protect somebody and make sure that their health insurance benefits continued, you know, through the remainder of their, that semester and that, at least that kind of first half of the year, last half of the year. Then this next one was an addition as well. Again, back to those situations where we maybe had somebody who had been provided a lot of days from the sick leave bank. There wasn't any language of this nature in here in terms of when they separated and they maybe were eligible for the retirement benefit, they were receiving pay and they owed days to the sick leave bank. So we wrote, prior to separation from the district, any staff member who owes days to the sick leave bank will not be eligible for retirement benefits as outlined in board policy GBOA, which is retirement, until all outstanding leave bank days are repaid. So if I had, you know, I had 150 days in my accumulated bank and I was retiring and I qualified for that benefit, but I still owed 50 days to the sick leave bank, I pay back those 50 days and I could be paid for those remaining 100 days. Next change we made was in the repayment side of things. You can see there that a full-time employee who's gotten days from the bank for an extraordinary circumstance, they would pay back at a rate of 2 days per year. So we increased that to 3, just to kind of help in expediting some of those that have numerous days from the bank. Next area we worked on was the non-extraordinary medical and health related circumstances. This is the one that gets the most blurry, if you will. So we tried to give a little more definition to what we're talking about when we talk about non-extraordinary medical circumstances, particularly when we talk about care of another. So the first, the letter A is if you're having your own personal non-extraordinary situation. The second one is the same non-extraordinary, but for caring of another. And it was so general that it was hard to deny somebody when, well, I have a 2-year-old and I don't have daycare. And so I want to take days from the sick leave bank because I don't have daycare for the next week. Well, there's no medical need there. So we really felt like we needed to get language in there that connected this to the fact that the sick leave bank's purpose is for a medical need, including if you're caring for another, obviously if they have a medical event or condition. And then cleaned up the next section to individuals eligible for the leave bank prior to applying must have used all of their accrued leave following district leave policy, which includes illness, bereavement, sick leave, PTO, and personal business leave. They do include all of those because we do have some educators and staff members who have vacation and sick leave still because of the structure of there. And we have classified staff that the sick leave bank serves as well. And so we wanted to make sure we were inclusive there.
So did you want vacation included in that?
We don't have vacation. Yes.
And then do we have employees who have personal business leave still?
Yes.
Okay.
Amount of time granted, we struck out the no minimum number of consecutive days of absence is necessary. That again was part of our difficulty before, because up above you saw it said you had to have 20 consecutive days, and then we had this down here that said you didn't have to have consecutive days. So we were trying to just be as consistent as we could, but struck that out. Repaying of leave. That financial reimbursement of, we took out the illness bereavement days and just, financial reimbursement of days used from the bank shall not be binding upon the heirs of the employee. So we wouldn't be going after somebody's family if they have days from the bank. And I think that was everything. I have to give kudos to the sick leave bank committee. Like, they have been really awesome about having sometimes some really hard conversations with some of the requests we get, and really always being fair and consistent. But we all felt like get the language cleaned up so that we were being fair and transparent for the staff too.
On this repayment, from 2 to 3, when does that happen in the year? Does that happen at the beginning? So they just, if they had 15 days, they would instead have 12. And then on the front page, when we're talking about employees joining the leave bank, that language, I think there's still parts of it that are discussing a different treatment for folks in their first year. So there's things like after 1 year, you can donate a day, and then on the next arm later in that point, you can join, you're eligible to donate a day within the first 30 days following your 1-year employment anniversary. So it seems like if our intention is that a new hire can jump right in and throw a day into the pot, some of that language may need to be examined a little more.
I think that's probably just being redundant, because it's employees are eligible to donate 1 day within the first 30 days following their 1-year employment anniversary. So that's still requiring that they
be employed for a year.
Well, my question is that still our intent, that they have to be employed for a year first?
Yes.
Do we know the reason behind the first year employees not being able to donate a day if they chose to become part of the sick leave bank?
Well, I think a couple of things, knowing that they have not been with the district for a year. And this covers classified staff as well. We have concerns with plowing through all of your leave and then accessing the sick leave bank. And the potential that you could have worked very, very little in terms of actually being present. And continue to be receiving payment from us.
Question under letter E, the extraordinary medical or health related circumstances. There's a number 1 and then there's an A directly below it. Should that A be indented or should that be a number 2?
Looks like that's.
I think there's a few cases where I think that's true. There's another one, when I was taking the notes, I noticed it was, under B3, there's 3, 4, and then 4. I think it's probably just the track changes and messing with the formatting.
We found too that as we were toppling back and forth, that something happens when you go and do the track changes because it changed some of them. Like we were looking at one and on the original, like, you know, we go to the website and look at the original and it would have them as 1, 2, and 3, but on our version that we were looking at making changes on, if it changed them to A, B, and C.
Yeah, it's like
So-
if you accidentally get it in words form, like it wants to auto format for you. Yeah, it's a mess, so.
So I think some of
Yeah.
like those kinds of things, like we always have to do, we're gonna. have to
Yeah.
do
I think they're just,
Yeah. But it definitely can be a challenge.
Yeah.
It's nice to track and know what you've changed, but.
yeah. But yeah, it's just like if you look at section D, you can see where it was 1 and then it became 2 and then back to 1 and then 3 was 4 and then now it's just a 2. Like,
Yeah.
so you can just see it's just the tracking of it. Yeah.
On EA.
Yeah.
Extraordinary medical. The 20, I think is marked out, but I'm assuming
Yeah.
you want 20 there.
No.
No.
we
Yeah.
don't.
So,
Because we really haven't imposed any kind of, because, you
Okay.
know, not everyone has been gone that number of days when they have the need for sick leave.
got you.
You know,
Okay, I'm following now. So it's 4 consecutive or intermittent days.
yes.
Okay.
And because it's already written in that you have to exhaust your days,
Mhm.
that
Then you don't need the 20. Okay, I got it. Great. Wrap my head around it.
yeah, it's a whole different, like, you have to shift from thinking about FML and all of those things because it's a whole different ballgame.
We're gonna meet afterwards anyway, so rather than breaking and coming back.
Yeah,
And let me.
well, the other thing that was on the list, obviously we had some time to talk about this group, and also get some feedback. From Director Sped and some people that have insight into that. And, you know, one of our hesitations, I guess, is some of the things we talked about when we first introduced it was slicing up our teachers into such small groups to where does that stop, right? Who was the next committee and not pitting them against each other, but having individual subjects or things, committees for those things. We go down that route. The other thing that I wasn't totally aware of is it sounds like there's been a group kind of meeting for the last couple of years, and I think you've been a part of that. Is that right?
Yeah, we have an OEDA committee who has been sharing information with district administrators.
Okay, and I think our interest would be, if we already have that process in place, to maybe look at that and maybe who's included in that, and maybe that becomes more robust. Maybe that means meeting more often too. With that, I don't know how often that group met or has met over the last couple of years. And I've shared kind of a list of some of the solutions that were talked about in there, and at least one of them that came here as a proposal also. So, which we've agreed to. So, we feel like there's already kind of a process in place for that, and feel like that would alleviate the fear, I guess, or concern of really going down the route of creating individual subject area or really niche committees, to where we could address it there, at least look at how we can maybe make that more robust. And then if like in that case, that one that came here, then an idea comes out of that, then obviously you or us could bring that as a proposal too.
Could you further clarify what you mean by there is no process?
I said there's already a
Or
process.
like what process is that?
Well,
Because from my understanding, it's evolved we have a group of SPED educators who have been organizing, but it was always at the point of, will the district administrators sit down with us to listen? Is that the correct?
Yeah, and I might
It's not
involve,
guaranteed
yeah,
that those educators would have a meeting.
yeah, and my understanding is, so far as we have requested to meet, that meeting has taken place. I would say that the difference between where we were going with the professional council subcommittee versus the current model, at least what I've seen this year, is that it's more, the current model is, here's some information we've collected, we are sharing it with you. And then, okay, rather than, hey, can the two groups work on the shared interest of SPED retention, which is a statewide and nationwide issue, and coming up with some collaborative solutions for those issues. So that's why we wanted it as a professional council subcommittee, is to kind of streamline that into, let's be solutions oriented versus we're reporting to you what we have, and then the district administrators are listening to that. I don't think we've ever been denied a meeting, but just the dynamics are different when we're reporting versus, hey, we're here to work on collaborative solutions. So, you know, we would obviously be open to making that more collaborative. Just hasn't been in the past. Yeah.
I think, and this was just
This year we met once. Last year,
again, based on my understanding.
yeah.
The collaborative part is certainly something. You know, I think sounds like that group has even expanded over the years too, to include a member of HR. And obviously SPED directors, coordinators, and then even Ashley, you know, our council that works with SPED too. So I think we're certainly open to at that in a different way, if that's how it's felt, if it hasn't felt collaborative, it just felt like reporting.
I can at least speak to my experience this year. Everybody was respectful, for sure. It was more just, okay, we're reporting and then, okay, we're done. Mhm.
And it was interesting because I think because I did call just to check, if there was any concerns on the PD Day one, because that's one that was brought forth as a solution in that group this year. And they were like, oh yeah, we've talked about that. We're good with that. So that they were familiar with it from that meeting that was proposed, so. Yeah, I think we could certainly look at, maybe how that functions, maybe, yes. Like a long break between meetings for the next one.
I know.
Louise excited, she's gonna have some time for the notes.
Well, I also will be at the.
Oh, okay, Draws that card.
Oh, yeah, that's actually probably, we should do that.
Yeah.
Well, I think we
True.
are gonna have
That's true.
ECAS, so I think the intent was for ECAS. So I don't know if that would be,
Don't be the best.
yeah,
Willing.
yeah.
Just put dollar signs wherever you.
I shall say no first year member of professional.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
so that was the,
It's the same
this
document,
page.
yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
so it's referring to the reimbursement form.
Yeah.
Yes. Just language in a different place that refers to that.
Just making sure we didn't miss anything.
Alright. Same bat tonight, same bat, at least for the next. Alright, do you have any feedback on those minutes? Last 7th, not this time. I get those to you by Friday, and we'll get them in the note next week.
Feedback Friday.
Feedback Friday.
If you ever get antsy for the next set, the notes are posted in the professional council folder, usually a couple days after, but if you get really antsy for them.
Cause I'm always digging.
Like,
that
yeah.
one.
Right, I know,
Thank
yeah.
you for
Got that.
doing
Thank
that.
you.
Oh, yeah.
You would miss next.
Will,
I could go back to the transcript. Yeah.
yeah, my next out of town is springtime. Yeah.
Walmart.
Yeah, I think you kind of got it outlined. That's like nailed down.
For snacks. Oh, she said.
Huh?
Such for snacks.